You are listening to Fantasy Filmball with Matt and Dylan, and on this show, we turn movies into sports and look at all the Oscar prospects and their fantasy value.
I believe that this is going to win Best Picture, and here's why.
I mean, Denis Villeneuve got all the nominations he needed for Dune and still missed out on the Best Director slot.
Don't let me get my hopes up. The Academy has disappointed me too many times.
Thank you to the Academy. Thank you to all of you in this room.
I can't remember the last time I walked out of a movie theater on such a high.
No matter how certain it seems, anything can happen on nominations morning.
Never count the Golden Globes for just doing something off the walls and bonkers.
It's the kind of movie that reminds me of why I fell in love with movies.
And the Oscar goes to...
Welcome into episode 4 of Fantasy Filmball with Dylan and Matt, and on this show we turn movies into sports, and sports is just something that we don't talk about. And today we have a really cool episode because we're going to be talking about some of our favorite movies of 2022. As you see, I'm repping my favorite movie of 2022, and Matt, I know you have a lot to talk about today.
I got a lot to talk about. I noticed your shirt. I thought it's so cool. I mean, I love the Batman, and I mean, I'm repping something of my own. It's not really movie related, but I'm a huge Cuphead fan, and the new DLC for Cuphead is coming out tomorrow, so I'm absolutely pumped. And you know, so we're repping stuff in different ways. So I just wanted to start off this episode a little bit differently. I have a bit of an icebreaker question that I ask pretty much everyone, I think.
Okay.
And so it's a spin on a classic. I'm just curious who you'd pick for this. So I always ask people if there was one person through all history, celebrity, non-celebrity, anything, who you could stand beside and make a sandwich with, who would it be? It's not having dinner with them. It's not having dinner with them. It's you have to work in tandem to make the perfect sandwich. Who would it be?
So no dinner with Jay-Z? No dinner with Jay-Z.
No,
okay,
no dinner with Jay-Z. You have to find. It's got to be someone who you'd want to like work with. You know, it's got to be someone who'd be pleasant, who'd also have like good sandwich choice. Because there'd be some people where you'd be like, you'd be fun to be around, but you'd make a garbage sandwich.
You know, I have an answer here. It's kind of a joke answer, but the more I'm thinking about it in my head, the more I feel like it can actually work. So you were talking about how your shirt has the DLC coming out tomorrow. There's also a movie coming out this weekend with the Minions in it. And I feel like they would be great to make a sandwich with because they follow orders and they want to make whoever they're serving feel good and feel happy, and they would go to great lengths to make the sandwich. Wow, would that be the best sandwich? I don't really know, but I feel like something funny would happen along the way just because they're little goofballs, and
there'd be a little bit of antics, you know, a little bit of surprise in there. You know, I feel like there'd be some bananas involved, even if the sandwich, you know, it's classic. I mean, my answer, the classic one I always go with is Tom Hanks. Like, I feel like Tom Hanks would just, like, give you the warmest support. It would be great. I feel like he'd make, like, something really good. It would be, like, that'd be a tasty sandwich, Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
You know?
I have a real answer the more I'm thinking about it, but the Minions, they were, like, the first thing that came to mind. I was like, you know what, let me try to spin this into something. But I guess my actual answer, this kind of may come off bad now in June of 2022, but, you know, in January of 2022, this would have sounded great. I would go with Will Smith. He's so charming and charismatic. I've always been a huge Will Smith fan. He was one of my first like ever favorite actors. Like I remember being young and like knowing the name Will Smith, and like when you're young you don't really know actors' names, and I don't know which Will Smith I would want. If I would want like live action Will Smith, if I would want Shark Tale Will Smith, or I would want Oscars Will Smith. There's a lot of the options for which Will Smith you could take, and so like I feel like to the same level like Tom Hanks, they go, I think, would both be great sandwich makers.
Fair enough. You know what kind of sandwich Will Smith would be making?
I think I can guess, but I want to hear it.
Sandwich.
There we go. There we go.
But anyways, I mean, that's all for that. We want to speed through that a little bit quick because we have a lot to talk about today. First off is the news roundup of the week.
We've got the first trailer for Ron Howard's new movie, 13 Lives. Dyl, did you check out the trailer? What did you think?
I have. This may be a surprise to some people just based off of some of my favorite picks of each year, but I'm a huge Ron Howard fan. I guess more that comes from his acting than maybe his directing, but I will always check out something Ron Howard does. And 13 Lives is a movie I was kind of like hoping would be like a fun time, a good contender. I was having on a lot of my early lists as like 9 or 10 slots. Like maybe it could get in, maybe it could not. But after seeing this trailer, I am down with this. I really hope that Amazon does push this. My big scare is that release date, which could cause a lot of the hype to die down. But I mean, we saw that last year of Coda. Release dates don't really matter with this new Academy.
Yeah, and so with 13 Lives, I was also really stoked for it. I do like Ron Howard. I feel like sometimes he just gives very like bare minimum, but you know he puts out crowd pleasers. And with all the reports early on that this was getting the best test scores that MGM had ever gotten, I was like, yeah, this is in my top 5. And it had that November release date, which had me really, really stoked for it for awards. And then they said that they're shifting it to the summer, and that had me worried. It's not that a summer release can't make it in. I mean, we've been talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once making it in, which is an April release. We've been talking about Top Gun, about Elvis. Those are summer releases. So really, 13 Lives, we have nothing to worry about. It was more just the idea of taking it from a prime award season release and then moving it to the summer. But that said, Amazon recently released a statement saying why they're releasing it in the summer. And it's because their analytics show that most people want to watch this type of content in that month. So they're trying to get it to as many people as possible. They're trying to share this story with as wide an audience as possible. And they know that the summer release is going to do that better than November, December release could. So that gave me a little bit more hope, and the trailer definitely did. I think that it looks great, and it looks like it's adding something new to the conversation that wasn't in The Rescue last year, because I know that a lot of people, myself included, have been thinking, why do we need another movie when we had The Rescue, which summed up the events perfectly?
Nice. And we also got another trailer this week for a movie that I guess had the opposite effect for me for awards predictions, being The Woman King. We talked about costume design last week for my picks, and I had that just outside the top 5. Now it would be completely off of my list. The trailer, while it wasn't a bad trailer, it just didn't really give off Oscar vibes. It gave off more like blockbuster action movie. While it could still get, like, we've seen Oscars, but like blockbusters still get like an Oscar push. This just doesn't seem like the type of movie to hit both demographics.
But I do still think that it has a shot in costumes or makeup. I think that it clearly has a lot of money going towards these elements, and so I could see it pulling through and getting some of those below-the-line nominations. But that said, my anticipation for the movie has gone down just a little bit. I was really excited to see what they did, but you know, this is from the director of The Old Guard, the Netflix superhero movie, and the trailer's kind of giving me those vibes. It's not giving me like this is a breakout success. It just feels like, you know, it's probably going to be a solid, serviceable blockbuster. You know, it's not a Viola Davis play like we expected. It's just like, it's going to be fun, probably.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be fun. Just I guess we'll see, because it's also an earlier release. I think it's a September release date here so we don't have that too far to go for. But something that is pretty close for you, at least, is getting to see the new Knives Out movie.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking September release, and what else happens in September? It's TIFF. And being from Toronto, I go to TIFF every year. I've gone every year since 2012, and I will be going this year. So today it was announced that Glass Onion, Knives Out mystery, will be playing at the Toronto International Film Festival. Now, I saw Knives Out at TIFF back when it came out in 2019. I initially didn't have tickets for it or anything, but it was such a huge success at the festival that they added another screening, and I got tickets to that one. And, you know, I loved the movie. I think everyone loves Knives Out. It's just one of those, like, universally loved films. And I'm super excited for Glass Onion. And I'm extra excited to keep seeing what TIFF keeps putting out there, because I know this is the beginning of it. We're going to start seeing more and more announcements as the weeks go by.
I was just going to ask, you've gone to TIFF for a long time. What's been your favorite movie you've ever seen at the festival?
Favorite movie I've ever seen at the festival? That is a big question. And I'll drop some highlights. The first year that I went was in 2012, and I saw Cloud Atlas there, which I was so excited to see that. You know, I think I was in the 9th grade at the time, and I was just like, I am so pumped to see this movie. They didn't do a Q&A afterwards, which I'm still bitter about, because most TIFF movies do Q&As. They just, like, stood up, waved and left. But I just remember being absolutely enraptured by it because I was so excited for that movie that I was reading the book at the same time. So I finished the book the night before going to the premiere of that. It was so amazing. And I remember being so confused when I entered the lobby and heard people saying, wow, that movie sucked. And I was like, it was amazing. What are you talking about? But yeah, because I used to live a few hours away from Toronto, I would always travel through all of high school to get here. And I'd only stay for the weekend, and I'd usually see between 6 to about 10 films. But then when I moved here for school in 2017, I went all out, and I think I saw like 40 movies at the festival in 2017. I did the same at 2018. 2019, I got a press pass. Not a press pass. I got an industry pass, so I kicked it up a notch, and I saw around 50 films. Same with 2020, 2021. So, you know, I go all out. But yeah, I mean, keep watching the podcast for more TIFF updates because I am very heavily invested in this festival and I will be there covering it. And after TIFF this year, we will be doing a big roundup episode where I talk about everything that I saw at TIFF and give you guys like little quick reviews of everything.
I'm definitely excited for that because I go to a film festival every year, not as big as TIFF. It's the Virginia Film Festival. We usually get like the big Netflix contenders and maybe one here, one there. But like my favorite thing I've ever seen there was Waves. It was just like going into that. Maybe the movie wasn't my favorite movie I've seen from a film festival, just the experience overall. I had no clue what it was going in, and then I came out and I was just like in awe of like the film that I just saw because the two completely different tones of each act just really hit me. I really connected to a lot of the things in that film. But I would say the coolest experience had to be last year there was a screening of Mass, and Martha Plimpton was there doing a Q&A, so I got to ask her a few questions, and it was really fun because I've never been to a film Q&A like that because there was one with Christoph Waltz one year, but I had a basketball game, so I couldn't go, but it was nice to do that last year. But I'm really excited to hear all your takes from TIFF this year.
I'm excited to hear some of the films you see in Virginia Film Festival. Yeah, I mean, I saw Waves at TIFF too, and I sat and I got because I did the rush line for that, and they gave me one of the unused like industry tickets because they had like a bunch of people from A24 who were supposed to come that didn't show up. So I got to sit in the industry section, and I stole a sign from Sterling K. Brown's section that said reserved for Sterling K. Brown and guests. So, you know, I guess I'm Sterling K. Brown's guest for Waves. And I turned around because Drew Daniels, the cinematographer, was sitting behind me. And after the movie, I was like, nice job, Drew. He just was very confused with who I was. I think he thought that he was supposed to know me because I was
you're Sterling K. Brown's guest.
Crew. I'm Sterling K. Brown's guest. He should have known me.
Exactly.
So, yeah. But Waves was like an amazing festival experience, especially because no one really knew much about Waves at that point. It was kind of a big unknown, especially because I don't know if you remember, but there was some talk before Waves came out that people were there were rumors flying around about is Waves a musical? And not even that, is Waves a Kanye West musical?
Yes, I do remember those because that's originally why I bought my ticket.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, but I'm really happy with what it came out. I know there's a lot of different opinions on that film, but I'm glad with that A24 release. But there's another A24 release that we're going to have to wait just another year for, and that's one of my favorite directors, Ari Aster's next film, Disappointment Boulevard, which is also rumored to be a musical.
Is it really?
At one point it was, but I don't think it is anymore.
Okay, I'm gonna assume that would be insane if it was, because then there'd also be 2 Joaquin Phoenix musicals that are like dark thriller. That'd be a little bit too much. It'd be one of those like, you know, if I had a nickel for every single time that Joaquin Phoenix was in a dark musical thriller, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's kind of weird that it's happened twice.
It's a little weird, yes.
It's a little weird.
At least that's what I first heard after Midsummer came out, is that's what he said his next movie wanted to be. But he also calls Midsummer a romantic comedy, which that movie is not a romantic comedy. So and maybe in his eyes it's a musical, but actually it's not.
I mean, it makes sense. Dude has a pretty fucked up way of looking at the world, so...
Yes.
Anyways, we are going to move into our main topic of today, which is the year's halfway over. We are entering into July, the 7th month of the year, and we've seen a lot of movies, and we want to tell you some of our favorite movies that we've seen this year and talk a little bit about, what do we see maybe making it to the end of the year, making it to some of those award shows, and what do we see getting left in the dust. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was a movie I just saw on Sunday, a film that everyone's talking about right now. It's big on Netflix, and I was waiting until I could see it in a theater. And that is S.S. Rajamouli's RRR, which is a Telugu language film from India, and it is fucking awesome. Now, Dyl, you haven't seen the movie yet, right?
I have not. I've been trying to see it for about 2 months. I was like you. I wanted to see it in a theater, and literally about the time I learned about what the movie actually was the week it left my theater. And it hasn't come back since, but it is on Netflix. I just have a very busy schedule recently where carving out 3 hours for a movie at home is not always the most convenient thing, but I think I'm going to get to it here the next week.
All right. Well, I can't wait till you do, because this movie's amazing. Now, unlike you, it didn't come to a theater in my area, which is weird because I live in downtown Toronto, and there are Bollywood movies and Tollywood movies that come here all the time, and I had been waiting for this movie because I'd seen the director's previous movies, Bahubali, because he had 2 Bahubali movies, and those are some of the most insane action movies I've ever seen. So I've been looking forward to RRR forever. And for it just not to be released in Toronto was wild to me, especially because the theater that normally plays Bollywood movies had 3 other Indian films playing when RRR was not playing. And so I've been waiting months for this. I've been waiting since March to see it, and I didn't want to give up and watch it on Netflix. I wanted to wait and see it in the theater, and I'm so glad I did. This movie is the most bonkers, insane, amazing movie of the year. I think, for me, my favorite movie of the year is still Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think I'm going to have you talk about in a moment because, we've heard a lot of my thoughts on that, but I'd love to hear kind of what you have to say. But those 2 movies, I think, go hand in hand because they are both movies that they push the action form all the way to the limit. Any movie should deliver on the promise of its premise, and I think if you're going to see an action movie and you want some crazy action, you will not be disappointed with RRR. It's breathtaking. Now, just a quick thing, because I know a lot of people have been talking about, can RRR make it to the Oscars, and I would say no. I think it's going to be a little bit too wild. I don't think that they're ready for that yet, especially because I think when we've seen foreign films make it into the Oscars, they're usually pretty serious. Films like Amour, films like even Roma, Parasite, Drive My Car, they are films that played at Cannes or Venice. They're movies that are big film festival films that people can feel artsy about saying that they like. And RRR is it's basically Fast and the Furious if Fast and the Furious was turned up to 11 and much better than it is. So I don't think it's going to make it to the Oscars, and it breaks my heart because this movie deserves the world. But I mentioned Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I feel is kind of the same thing. And I do think that's making it to the Oscars. So who knows? Maybe RRR can go with it. Maybe it can snag an international feature nomination. I don't think it will, but I hope. And speaking of Everything Everywhere, take it away, Dyl. What do you think about Everything Everywhere?
Well, it's everything all at once. It was a amazing theater experience because I didn't really know what to expect going in. I had heard things, and I had heard it was good, and I had heard it was amazing. At that time when I saw it, I think I saw it a week after its original wide release. It was in limited for a week or 2, and then it went wide for a week, and then I saw it the week after that. I think it was that Tuesday. So I had heard a lot of buzz. At that point, it was already the top-rated movie on Letterboxd of all time. So I had very high expectations, and it met those, and maybe even exceeded them. This movie delivers on almost every aspect. Essentially, what you were saying about RRR, Everything Everywhere All at Once does the same thing. The performances, amazing. The comedy, it hits. The drama, the romance, the tears, they all come in at the right moments. And there's a lot of things to love from this movie. And I think this is a movie that, while it may seem weird or off on the surface, once you give it a chance and once you accept it for what it is, there's no way that you can't like it. I can understand being off-put from some of the things that happen in the movie and some of its directions, but I feel if you accept those and give it the opportunity, there's nothing not to like here. While it's not my favorite of the year, it's a very close second.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, Everything Everywhere and RRR, those are my number 1 and number 2 of the year. So I want to hear, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is my shirt here. My shirt here, my hat here. Sadly, I don't have a cowl, so I can't be Vengeance actually. But it's the Batman. When you were talking about RRR, about the thing you've just been dying to see in the theater, that was the Batman for me. Ever since that first trailer dropped, which seems like almost a year ago, even though it was like September, October, it's just been my number 1. I just couldn't wait for it. I needed to see it. I don't really buy advance tickets usually, but that movie I made sure to buy advance tickets to see it at a early fan event, and it was everything I could have wanted. Batman's my favorite superhero, and I've always liked the Batman adaptations, but I've always had a little bit of issues with them. They either lack here or lack there, but this one, it gave me everything I wanted. It gave me the detective thriller, because people ask, what's your favorite movie of all time? For me, it's a toss-up between Moonlight, Django, and Seven. And this movie is essentially Seven. Also, some other movies, but it really just takes those inspirations but molds it into its own thing, with Batman, with the Riddler, who's my favorite Batman villain, and with a lot of my favorite current working actors of Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz and Paul Dano. It just had a lot of just to love. The score is amazing. The action, when it comes in, it really delivers. I like how it's not all action, because other Batman movies, I think rely somewhat too much on the action here. But with this one, when the action comes, it's needed. It has a cause. It's not action just to have people fighting or car chases. It's to further the plot along. And maybe I'm giving this a little bit too many points because it is Batman, it is Robert Pattinson, it is Matt Reeves, it is Zoe Kravitz, all things I love, but it really just gave me everything I wanted. And this is a movie I think it's going to be really hard to top at the end of the year for my number 1 spot. While it's maybe not going to be the best movie of the year, it's going to be my favorite movie of the year.
So, Dyl, do you see the Batman making it to the Oscars? What sort of haul do you see out of the Batman?
I definitely can see the Batman making it to the Oscars. While I don't think it's going to be as much as it probably should get, I feel like at the bare minimum, makeup will be a nomination. I feel like it's going to get into visual effects, and I would really love to see costumes and production design and score, but I feel like those are kind of borderline ones. So I would say a minimum of 2 and a max of 6, including editing / sound for that other category, because I don't think it's going to get up to 7, but I feel like it could get editing and sound, but then it wouldn't get production design, or it wouldn't get score or something. But I would say a max of 6 and a minimum of 2.
Usually there's one film a year that comes out early, everyone kind of forgets about, writes off, and then it kind of comes back in award season. Like with Get Out, that was a film that came out in February, and then it had a huge revival at the end of the year. That wasn't one that people were talking about all year long as an awards contender. It was one that resurfaced at the very end as an awards contender. The same thing happened with Grand Budapest Hotel. That was a film that people loved at the beginning of the year, and then the talk around it kind of died down and was revived. So I really wonder if the Batman is going to be something that people start talking about again at the end of the year, thinking back, saying, was that really one of the best ones of the year? And it's possible. It's possible. Or, Everything Everywhere All at Once, also being an early contender, might kind of trample over that happening. So now I want to talk about some of my Sundance movies, some of the things that I caught at Sundance that I really loved. And one of those things was Duel, which is a movie that I feel pretty alone in loving as much as I do. I think Duel is hilarious. It's so much fun. Now, Duel is the new movie by Riley Stearns, who's the director of The Art of Self-Defense. And the premise of Duel is that it's a world where when you are dying, you can have a clone commissioned to replace you in your life. Now, if you end up not dying and you want to decommission the clone, you have to do so in a fight to the death. It's a really weird movie. It's kind of like The Lobster in a lot of ways. It reminds me a lot of The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And I thought it was just hysterical. No movie this year has made me laugh more than Duel, which is really odd because I don't think there's a single joke in that movie. It's just nonstop bleak absurdity. And I love this movie. This movie blew me away in a way that very few... I would actually go as far to say that I prefer it to The Lobster. Not many people are going to say that. But for me, Duel by Riley Stearns is absolutely one of my favorite movies of the year. Another movie I saw at Sundance and really liked, it's not one of my favorites, but I know that you feel pretty strongly about this one, Dyl, is Cha-Cha Real Smooth. So I'm going to hand that over to you because, I liked it, but I think that you loved this one.
I did. This is the most recent movie I watched. In fact, I watched this, I would say, less than 20 hours before recording this. And while the film definitely has its faults, it's not like a perfect movie, but this film really hit me in a lot of certain ways. I really connected with the lead character of Andrew, played by Cooper Raiff, who not just starred in it, he wrote it and he directed. I haven't seen Shithouse yet, so I can't really compare it to his previous work. But after watching this, I immediately looked up, is it streaming anywhere? Is it renting anywhere? How can I see this? And just Cha-Cha Real Smooth, while I'm not a huge fan of the title, I get the point of the title. I don't know what I would call it, but I don't know, something else, I guess. But this, to me, is Apple's best film release. In my opinion, it blows Coda out the water, and it's better than Tragedy Macbeth, and the rest of Apple's releases are just okay on the film side. But the acting in this movie is just so charming, so charismatic, which is another movie that we'll get to later on my list that also gave me some of the same feels. But this one just blew me away. I didn't really know what to expect because while I knew it won Sundance, I didn't know what the plot was about. I didn't know anything about this movie besides Dakota Johnson was in it and it won Sundance. And I was just really happy that I actually took the time out to watch it and was able to connect with a movie this much because I don't normally connect a lot with movies because I hear a lot of people who say like, this is my favorite movie because of how much I resonate with a character, how much I connect with it. And I've never really had a film like that, but I'm the same age as Andrew in this. I've gone through a lot of the same things that he has to go through this movie, and just a lot of just little things. We can go more into this later on a later episode, but there's just a lot to love here, and it's one that, like the Batman, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, is going to stay with me throughout the rest of the year.
Do you see much Oscar success happening for this movie?
I see a chance, which I know that we will dive into later in the episode, but I want to hear some more of your favorites throughout the year so far.
Well, actually, when I went to Sundance, I did see Cha-Cha Real Smooth, but that was not my favorite movie with Dakota Johnson in it, actually. My favorite movie with Dakota Johnson in it was Am I Okay?, which is the directorial debut of Tig Notaro. Is it Notaro? I don't know.
I do not know. I
have no idea, but she's hilarious, and this movie is fantastic. Dakota Johnson is absolutely amazing in this movie. Again, it's Am I Okay? It was bought by HBO Max, so it's probably going to go straight to streaming later this year. It just gave me so many warm feelings. It's so funny. It's so sweet and lovely, and it's everything a rom-com should be, especially because it's a rom-com where there's really no romance. It's just about a woman who's kind of discovering herself at a late age. And to me, when I was hearing everyone buzzing about Dakota Johnson in Cha-Cha Real Smooth, all I could think about is that she was better in Am I Okay? That movie's lovely, and I really hope that it gets the credit that it's due. It is not a contender, though. But something that I saw at Sundance that is a contender is Living. Now, Living is a remake of Akira Kurosawa's 1952 movie, Ikiru, which means to live. So the film stars Bill Nighy, and this is a role that, I think could possibly get him into the Oscar race. Now, it's bought by Sony Pictures Classics, who's going to be releasing it later this year. I would worry that they have too much on their plate because they're also releasing The Sun, and Living is not so much a contender in Best Picture or any other categories. It's really an acting contender for Bill Nighy. So I don't know. If Hugh Jackman doesn't pan out as well as we think he would, then Bill Nighy, I think, has a chance of making it into the Best Actor 5. I loved the film a lot more than I think a lot of people did. It's going to be one of my favorites of the year at the very end of the year. I thought it was a touching telling of this story, and it kind of put forward a really compelling case as to why this movie should be remade. Because, I'm a huge Akira Kurosawa fan, and to me, his movies are pretty untouchable. So going into it, I was a little bit worried that this film maybe doesn't have a huge reason to exist. And some other contenders that I saw at Sundance, Call Jane. Now, Call Jane is super relevant right now. And I go back and forth thinking, could this be a contender? Could it not be a contender? Call Jane got some really mediocre reviews at Sundance. It's a film directed by Phyllis Nage, and Phyllis Nage is the woman who wrote the movie Carol, which we all know and love, and this is her directorial debut. And the film is based on a true story. It's based on something that also had a documentary made about it this year, which is on HBO, called The Janes. It's basically a group of women in Chicago that provided illegal abortions to women who obviously could not get them. I think it's a really great film. It's just a good crowd pleaser. It's a little bit of a green bookification of the abortion topic, where it's like maybe a little oversimplified, maybe a little bit too feel good for something as complex and as this. But I think it's really important. I think it's really impactful. Plus, it's a really entertaining film, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a film about such a heavy political topic. But, it's got a late October release date from kind of a crappy distributor with Roadside Attractions. Could this enter the Oscar conversation with what's happening this year? Totally could. So I'd be interested to see what happens with that. Again, it's one of my favorite movies of the year, but it's not going to be one of everyone's favorite movies of the year. It's got pretty mediocre reviews from Sundance. But that's my Sundance. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Dylan, because I know you've seen some other stuff, and I don't want to ramble about Sundance too long.
No, you're good. Feel free to ramble about Sundance all you want. I attended virtually the year when Judas and the Black Messiah was there and saw that and a few other things. So I get how fun it can be, and you just want to talk about it, because that's all I want to do with my friends. Just a lot of people don't want to hear about it, but I will gladly listen to your Sundance talks. But the movies I want to talk about real quick before I get into my final Oscar movies that I saw are a bunch of ones that have no real shot of getting in. But the first one is Jackass Forever. Should it be in the Oscar conversation? Sure, why not? Get it back in there for makeup. The franchise has one before. This one maybe not, but it was just a great time. I get the criticisms of these movies, but if you're on board, just sit back, relax, have fun watching people get hit. I saw it twice. So I'll let that speak for itself. And another one that's just a really fun watch. I get the criticisms here. I have a lot of criticism with this movie. But Ambulance from Michael Bay, it delivered on just a fun, turn your brain off action movie from earlier this year. It was kind of a box office failure, which kind of surprised me, because this seems like a movie that would just be a great word of mouth movie from people seeing it and be like, oh, Jake Gyllenhaal's in this. He's given a very manic performance, and people seem to like manic Jake Gyllenhaal. It has the action. It has the suspense. It has some very flashy and in-your-face editing. And the biggest issue with this movie is it has no reason to be 2.5 hours, but it is. So that's my fault with it. But if you chop some of that out, there's a very good action movie in that. So I just want to give a shout out to Ambulance, because it's a movie that, it could get a sound nomination at the end of the day, but probably not after the box office performance. And the last three things I want to head into before I throw it back to you are the resurgence of Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum's one of my favorite actors. He had The Lost City and Dog this year, two just hilarious movies and feel-good movies. And they're ones, I only saw them once a piece, but they're ones I feel like I could watch on loop and just still find enjoyment here and there, just because Channing Tatum just has such amazing screen presence. And speaking of screen presence, we have Mark Rylance in The Phantom of the Open. I didn't really know what to expect going into this movie, but I had a blast. Not as much as Cha-Cha Real Smooth with relating to it and feeling the emotions, but I hit a lot of the same notes with Phantom of the Open. It's just one of those movies that I like to call it the Paddington 2 feeling, where you just see a movie and it just makes you smile, makes you feel all warm inside. And Phantom of the Open definitely did that for me, and that's one I would highly suggest, because it's in theaters this week as in an expansion. If you have the opportunity to see it, definitely seek it out. I have two more I want to talk about later, but I'm going to throw it back to you, Matt.
Well, I want to talk about some of my cheesy films that, aren't going anywhere near the Oscars, but I love anyways. The same way that you love Ambulance. I loved Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Now, this is one of my favorite movies of the year, but for me, I'm a sucker for anything that The Lonely Island puts out. Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping is
Amazing.
One of my favorite comedy movies of all time. And so when I saw that there was a Chip and Dale movie, I was like, I'm not going to watch that. And then when I saw that it was directed by Akiva Schaffer and was written by The Lonely Island, my ears kind of perked up, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And when I watched it, I was like, this gives me everything I want. And the other one that I really loved, which is totally a guilty pleasure, is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is the Nicolas Cage movie starring Nicolas Cage as Nicolas Cage in a wild Nicolas Cage-filled adventure. This is a movie that I absolutely adore, and Pedro Pascal is pretty amazing in it too. I know not everyone's going to love this, but for me, as a Nicolas Cage fan, it just, like, total fan service, and I loved it.
To your point, Pedro Pascal's performance in that movie is probably my favorite comedic performance of the year so far, so I definitely back you with that. Speaking of a movie that's just for the love of cinema, The Bad Guys. I didn't think I would have fun with this, but it was a blast. It has a lot of just like heist and crime movie like shout outs throughout. The voice acting cast is honestly one of the best animated voice acting casts in like the last few years. Like I keep my own like personal Oscars like throughout the year for like our end of the year like Reddit ones, and right now The Bad Guys is in my top 5 for ensemble, just because everyone's just like on their A game in that movie, and I just had a blast with The Bad Guys. And 2 other movies I had a blast with that we sort of talked about on the show so far is Top Gun Maverick. I was in the camp that was very much doubting this movie, and like, why are we getting a Maverick after like 30 years? And it proved me wrong. It was amazing. It is everything a blockbuster should be and more. And I had a blast with it. I can't wait to watch it again, and I can't wait to see how it does throughout the year, because you were talking earlier about the Batman like resurging later. One reason why I think the Batman could like not fare well at the Oscars is because all those nominations that it could get, you can just give to Top Gun Maverick, and everyone loves Top Gun Maverick. And the last movie I want to hit on is the one that we talked about last week, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's Elvis. I feel like last week I was kind of like dogging on it, but I love this movie. I gave it a light 8 on my first viewing. I saw it again yesterday, and now I give it a strong 8. Everything I loved about the movie got even better on a second viewing. Austin Butler is just so commanding. His vocal performance, his physical performance, and especially just the way he moves in the movie. Like, he really just encapsulates everything that you want out of these musical biopics. And I've come around to the editing. The first act on a rewatch makes sense with the sporadicness, the boldness, the in-your-face, the Moulin Rouge aesthetic, because Elvis's life is pretty crazy at the time. He's going from a no one to the biggest man on earth. And then I think the containedness of the whole Vegas aspect at the end makes sense, because Elvis at that time is cooped up on pills. His life is being controlled. He's being told, no, you can only be here. You can't go anywhere else. And if you do, we're containing you. So you only walk into that stage, then you walk back to the plane in the next city. And I think it really works. I'm very interested to see where the Oscar discussion with this movie goes, because I feel like the sky could be the limit, but I also feel like if certain factors come into play, like you mentioned last week, of I Want to Dance with Somebody or Don't Worry Darling ends up being a sensation, or just it coming out in June being a factor that Elvis could stumble, or it could be just a bright star on a nominations morning.
Totally. I mean, we talked about it a lot last week, but Elvis is a movie that I really liked. It's not going to be one of my favorites of the year, but it's one that I feel pretty content as, like, you know, if that's a good movie. It's just fun. It's nice. It's good. Now, I mean, we're going to wrap up our favorites of the year pretty shortly, but I want to talk about some movies that haven't come out yet that I've seen and I've loved, because I've been doing a lot of screening of some upcoming films and some films that I've been really excited about sharing with everyone else. So some of my favorites that I've seen are Alcarras, which is a Spanish film. It is from... So one of my favorites is Alcarras, which is a Spanish film. It won the Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival this year. And it's a film that I was a little bit... I wasn't really that excited for, even with the Golden Bear win, because I'd seen the director's previous film, which is called Summer 1993. And I thought it was okay. It didn't really go anywhere. It was just a little bit of a cute coming-of-age story. But Alcarras, for me... it gave me everything I wanted out of that coming-of-age movie in this. The film follows a family of peach farmers. I think they're peach farmers, and they are losing their property, and it's seen through the eyes of their kids, who are growing up on this beautiful, expansive orchard, and we get to see their imagination. It reminds me a lot of the Florida Project. It's such a beautiful film. It's a really fun film, and it left me really, really thinking about a lot of things. So that was a film that I really loved, and I can't wait for people to see. I think Mubi is distributing it, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about its Oscar chances, because I think that this one could get nominated. Then another film that I saw and really loved was a Cannes competition film called Boy from Heaven. Now, Boy from Heaven is Tariq Saleh's new film. He previously did The Niall Hilton Incident, and this year's film The Contractor, starring Chris Pine. Now, I haven't seen The Contractor. I've heard it's, like, super mediocre, but Boy from Heaven is anything but mediocre. This is a fantastic film. It's a political thriller which is set at a Muslim university in Egypt, at Al-Azhar, which is basically the beacon of the Muslim world. And after the Grand Imam dies suddenly, the entire university and the entire country is kind of thrown into turmoil, because they have to figure out who the new Grand Imam is. And everyone kind of wants to get in that conversation. The government wants in, the radical groups want in, and we see it all through the eyes of this freshman who is just trying to succeed in school, and suddenly he's being used by the government as a spy to try and influence who gets elected to become this new huge figure in the Muslim world. And it's a fantastic movie. It's such a good thriller, and it's a film that won Best Screenplay at Cannes, and yet it seems pretty underseen at Cannes. I know in my Letterboxd feed I didn't see a lot of people seeing this movie, and so it kind of went a little underseen, a little underappreciated, but it is a fantastic film, and whenever it comes out, whether it's this year or next year, I hope it makes a splash because it's great. And another film that was at Cannes that won another award is All That Breathes, which won the award for Best Documentary at Cannes. It also played at Sundance, where it also won Best Documentary. And this is a film that I think could be this year's Honeyland, because it's a film from India. It is a documentary and it's an international film. I think that India could submit this to both categories, and I think it could get into both categories. But it is a beautiful, poetic, cinematic film which takes a look at air pollution in Delhi, and looks at how it's killing a specific type of bird, the black kite. And the black kite is a bird that no one cares about because it's a carnivore. It's not a pretty bird. It's like a vulture. And yet this species is dying. And no one cares because, again, it's ugly. So, but it's a film that I think is treated so well. There's times where I was watching this and I forgot it was a documentary. Like, it just looks so cinematic, so beautiful. It's really, really strong. And I hope that this one kind of carries into the conversation because it's so damn good. And another documentary that I saw last year, which still hasn't been released, and I'm really hoping it gets released, is Users, which won the directing award at Sundance last year, 2021. It still hasn't been released, and it's beautiful. It reminds me of The Tree of Life. It is such a stunning film, and I really hope it gets a release this year because I love that movie. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is Palm Trees and Power Lines, which the film itself isn't my favorite, but the performance in it by Lily McInerney is absolutely amazing. Like, this is a film that is, like, her performance is going to stick with me. It's so good. It's another Sundance movie, and, you know, this one, when it comes out, really seek it out. It's very indie, but that performance is going to go with me to the very end of the year. I know it for sure.
Well, you mentioned Vulture, and a Vulture relates to a movie that should be on a lot of people's best of the year, Morbius. Like, who doesn't love Morbius?
Wow,
but
we forgot to mention the obvious number one.
It made
of the
more
year.
$1 billion rated out of 10 on IMDb. It's the greatest movie of all time.
Well,
but that
I know why we didn't mention it, and it's just because it goes without saying. You know, everyone's seen it, everyone knows it. We don't need to tell anyone to see that movie.
Exactly, but there's movies that I know that I've missed, and I'm sure, I mean, you see a lot of movies, but there's definitely ones that you've probably missed too, and the top one on my list that I somehow haven't watched this year, which, being a Kanye fan, this really surprises me, I haven't seen Genius yet, and every time I tell myself, this is the weekend I'm going to watch it, something comes up and I can't watch it.
Well, it's so intimidating, it's 4.5 hours, right? You got to dedicate that time.
Yes, but at the same time, I sat and watched. I'm trying to think of a good example of a time when I've wasted time when I could have watched that instead. I'm trying to think of a good one because there is a good one. I saw Morbius in theaters, so
Yeah, you could. I mean, well,
I could have used that time to get through episode 1 at least.
Yeah, in the last 2 days, you've seen The Black Phone and Cha Cha Real Smooth, and definitely
Yes.
in that time period, you could have watched Genius. Now, I mean, I can't wait to hear what you think about Genius, because I really liked that film, especially as someone who, you know, I can't call myself a Kanye fan anymore, but I definitely have been a huge Kanye fan in the past, and so to relive all that time and see someone who really just is such a genius progressing from, you know, being this young, hungry artist to being the superstar that he is, it's so good. Like, it's what a fantastic documentary. And some films that, I mean, I've missed, not even missed, because it's not even out yet when we're recording this. It's Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. That's one that I am so pumped for. Neither of us have seen it yet, but I cannot wait to see it. So that's one that cannot be on our list, even though it technically should be eligible for our list. We just haven't seen it yet. So I can't wait for that one. And one that another stop motion film that I've heard of very recently, and I'm so excited to see it, but just haven't had the time to watch, is Mad God. Have you heard anything about Mad God, Dylan?
I mean, that could just be another name for the Genius documentary, but I have not.
It really could. But Mad God is, I think it's on Shudder, and basically it's this special effects artist has been working on it for 30 years. Now, this special effects guy, he worked on all the original Star Wars movies. I think he was on Jurassic Park. He's been working nonstop in the industry, and for 30 years he's been making this movie. And it's entirely stop motion. There's no words, and it's this kind of crazy, surreal horror movie set on an alien planet. It looks insane, and I've been dying to watch it. So, you know, I will be watching it soon. Maybe I'll talk about it on the show if it's something that I really love, but it looks totally up my alley. Just like a weird psychological trip.
I think I have heard about it once you mentioned like the Star Wars person and everything, but I did not know the name. That's one I'm also interested in. Your description really sold me. So I'm definitely excited to hear what your thoughts are, and then based on your thoughts, I'll probably seek it out after that. But I know there's a few movies that I haven't seen that you have seen, which includes Official Competition and have you seen Hustle with Adam Sandler?
I have not seen Hustle yet, but I've been wanting to see Hustle. I'm just not rushing to it. But I have seen Official Competition, and it's really fun. It's
one I drafted last year in our Fantasy Filmball League, and I probably might pick it again this year because the early buzz in that movie is it's everything that I wanted it to be. So I'm very excited to finally see it whenever it does come, because I have a theater here that usually plays most of the international films, so I'm very excited to finally dive into that because it seems like I've heard about that film for almost a year and a half or two by now.
Well, you get to see Penelope Cruz flossing. What could be better than that?
Wow, exactly.
And I think there's a few that I haven't seen that you have seen. I mean, you mentioned Jackass Forever. That's one that I had never seen a Jackass movie before this year, except Bad Grandpa, which I thought sucked. But before Jackass Forever, I marathoned Jackass, Jackass 2, and Jackass 3D, and I really liked all of them. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Good.
I wanted to see it in theaters, and by the time I wanted to see it in theaters, everyone that I wanted to see it in theaters with had already seen it. So I was just like, I was kind of shit out of luck to see that movie in theaters because I didn't want to go on my own for that one. You know, I'm cool with seeing most movies on my own. Jackass Forever, that's a different story. I want to go with a group that's going to, like, you know, really enjoy it with me. But I will watch it eventually. I think you've also seen X and Men. I haven't seen X or Men, but I have seen X-Men. But, you know, both of these movies are... I mean, I haven't heard great things about Men, but it's an Alex Garland movie, and I'm curious. I'm really curious, even if it's something that I end up not really loving. It's one that I'm excited for regardless. And X, you know, I've heard such great things about this. I just haven't seen it. What did you think about X?
I am a lot lower on X and Men than most people are.
But what do you think about X-Men?
X-Men, I guess I'm also lower on that than most people are too. But X is a movie that I think has great technicals. I just am not a fan of the overall movie. But I just running through some of the other ones I have here. Kimmy with Zoe Kravitz is one that I, just like Genius, has had like times where I'm like, I'm going to watch this today. And then when I sit down to watch it, I go with something else instead. Jackass 4.5 is something I did not know existed until last week. So it's one that once I actually have a chance to watch with someone, I'm going to put that on. The Beatles, The Get Back is something that I meant to see it when it had that IMAX weekend, but I was out of town for work. So I did not get a chance, and I would like to wait maybe until it gets a re-expansion or my local indie theater shows it for a day because they show movies like that.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about taking 4.5 hours for a Kanye documentary, why don't you take 8 hours for a Beatles documentary too,
yes.
Right?
As we do every week on the show, we're going to go into some predictions, and this week Matt is going to share what he thinks could get in for international feature.
Yeah, I mean, RRR, I'm just going to say it right now. I don't think it's getting in for international feature, not just because it's a bit of a wild movie, but because the rules of international feature kind of go against it. So just for anyone who doesn't know how the category works, it's not like any film can get nominated for Best International Feature. For one thing, you have to speak 50% of the movie or more has to be spoken in a language that is not English. And not just that, it's not like anything can qualify. It has to have been selected by its country, which means that a lot of good films get left out because the country that would have submitted it submitted something else. It happened last year, like I mentioned. Titan was submitted instead of Happening. I think Happening could have got in, but Titan did not make it into the final 5. So every country submits their film of choice. Now, at this point, we won't know what films are actually being submitted until September, but we can sort of guess what films will be submitted. So at number 1 in international feature, I've got Bardo, or False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. Now, this is a film directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu, and it's a film which Netflix is releasing. It feels a lot like Roma. Big director, big film. It's Iñárritu's first Spanish-language film since 2010 when he made Beautiful. And I don't think that there's any way that Mexico does not release this film. Does not select and submit this film for the Oscars. And if it gets into Best Picture like we think it is winning international feature. The rule of the game here is the film that is the closest to winning and getting in to above-the-line categories, that's the one that is going to win international feature, and Bardo is that one. Then following after that, I've got a Cannes film, which made a huge splash, almost won the Palme d'Or, which of course eventually went to Triangle of Sadness, which is in English. But the film that I think is competing with Bardo for that top slot is Close. Now, Close is a film from Belgium, and it is directed by Lucas Daunt, who's a young filmmaker. He's made one movie before, which is very controversial, called Girl. But Close is the story of two young boys who are very close friends. I don't know much more about it, but A24 picked it up at Cannes. It won the second place prize at Cannes, and it's one that I think is extremely exciting. It's very likely to be picked by Belgium. They do have another film called Tori and Lokita, which could also compete, but I think Close is the one that they're going to be submitting. And I can say with almost certainty, if they submit it, it's getting nominated. And the third one on my list right here is Alcarras, which is the film that I talked about before. It's a Spanish film. It is beautiful. It is like the Florida Project. It's very funny, very fun, very charming, and it's very impactful and beautiful. So this is a film that I definitely don't see Spain choosing anything else. Now, that's a dangerous thing to say after what happened last year with Spain not choosing Parallel Mothers and choosing The Good Boss instead. But, you know, Alcarras seems like something that they would submit to the Oscars. So it's my solid number 3. Then at number 4, I have a possible South Korean submission, but there's another film that could also be submitted by South Korea. But the film that I think they're going to submit is Broker, which is the new Hirokazu Koreeda film. It won the Best Actor prize at Cannes for Song Kang-ho, who was one of the lead actors in Parasite. And Broker is a film about a group of people who get together and create a business around selling babies that have been left at drop boxes. There are these baby boxes that you can leave your baby at and it will find a better family. And the story is about a group of people who get together and sell those babies. But apparently it's somehow really sweet. And Neon is releasing the film. I really think that this one, if it's submitted by South Korea, I'll mention the other one that could be submitted by South Korea later, but this one could totally make that top 5. At number 5, I'm a little shaky on this, but Austria has a film called Corsage, which the poster of it looks great. The film apparently is fantastic, and it reminds me a lot of... It's giving me some Phantom Thread vibes, especially because the lead actress in this was the lead actress in Phantom Thread. It's also giving me a little bit of The Favorite. I think Corsage could totally make it in. And something to always consider with this international category, usually 3 out of 5 of the films are European. So I've got an Austrian film, I got a Spanish film, and I got a Belgian film. And then, of course, I have Broker and Bardo, which are not European films. But afterwards, I'm just going to run through some other possibilities here. We've got Holy Spider, which is a film from Iran, and apparently it's a very David Fincher-esque thriller. You're going to like this one, Dyl. It's about a journalist who's trying to uncover a serial killer that's going around the streets killing prostitutes. And so apparently it's a very, very compelling film with a great lead performance. There's also The Eight Mountains, which is an Italian film about 2 dudes going up a house and building they're going up a mountain and they're building a house together in the mountains. It sounds very charming.
Going up a house and building a mountain sounds pretty charming as well.
I mean, that's pretty... who knows? Maybe alternate world. You know, there's probably an Everything Everywhere universe out there where you would do that. You'd go up a house, build a mountain. And then I've got another South Korean film in here, which could be picked. It's Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave, which, of course, won the directing prize at Cannes. Now, Park Chan-wook has a bad history with the Academy because he is not typically selected for the international feature category. His film The Handmaiden was not submitted. His film Old Boy was not submitted. So I don't know if Decision to Leave is going to be submitted either, as much as people might hope it will be. I think that South Korea is going with Broker, but I've got it in my top 10 anyways, just in case. Then, of course, there's All That Breathes, which is the Indian film, which is a documentary, which I really think could make a mark. And then I've got a Ukrainian film called Klondike, which played at Sundance to great acclaim. And of course, being a Ukrainian film, I think it will make a huge impact this year. It's about war in Ukraine, and it's a very, very slow burn movie. I don't know if it's going to really resonate with voters, but I think it's totally possible and it's worth putting in. Just running through some other things quickly, too. We've got Sweden's film, which is set in Egypt, but it is a Swedish film, Boy from Heaven, which I mentioned before. Also got Germany, which has All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a Netflix film. It's a remake of a Best Picture winner. We've got Falcon Lake from Canada, representing, of course. Girl Picture, which is a Finnish film. It's very lovely. It's a little bit Lady Bird. We've got Godland from Iceland. Layla's Brothers, also from Iran, if they do not select Holy Spider. We've got Official Competition, which is not from Spain. It is from Argentina. And Official Competition, I think, really could make that impact this year that it didn't last year. We've got Japan's Plan 75, which is a movie about killing all of the old people. We've got Ireland, which is submitting The Quiet Girl, probably. It might be too much in English, but, you know, The Quiet Girl is one to watch out for. We've also got RMN from Romania, which played at Cannes to pretty big acclaim, even though it did not win any awards. And finally, it's worth mentioning, but I don't think it's happening, RRR. India usually does not submit its big blockbusters to the Oscars. Usually they submit smaller films. You don't usually see those big movies coming through here. Usually you see stuff like The Lunchbox instead, which is much smaller, much quieter. That's why I think that they're going to go with the documentary instead of a film like RRR. However, it's worth mentioning RRR because it's such a sensation in the Western world that who knows, maybe they will push that as their submission. But anyways, I think I've talked enough about the international feature category. Dylan, I know I'm probably a little bit more familiar with these films than you are. I've seen a lot of these films already, but is there anything that you kind of want to say in there? Any questions that you might have about any of these movies? Because this is all like a new slate. Maybe this is one of the categories that people usually have a hard time with.
Yes, so I have a few, I guess, hypotheticals or comments to make original or off base. Even though I haven't seen the movie, I am different than you than RRR. I think they will submit it because, like Titan last year, it is such a sensation. And as many knew before they even submitted it, Titan was not the smart, like quote unquote smart choice to do, but they did it because of the passion behind the movie. I feel like India would do that with RRR this year because it's not just an internet sensation. It is a box office sensation globally. It has people in all continents speaking about it. And it currently is racking up views on Netflix, a global platform. I also think another Netflix film, All Quiet on the Western Front, has a chance. While maybe not a good chance, the fact that it is based off of a Best Picture winner, being a remake, I think does give it some merit. And it stars a very notable actor of Daniel Bruhl. And Official Competition is just a movie I think will have a shot. As you mentioned, this is a category I'm not very knowledgeable of at this moment, but from all the points you made, Bardo and Close and sound like a great 1 and 2. Corsage and Holy Spiders definitely sounds like two movies I would be very interested in. I think either Broker or Decision to Leave will make it. I don't think they just both miss. I think whatever one they end up submitting will get in. It's just which one they do. I also am leaning towards Broker. But I guess my one question for you would be is, why would you have a film, I guess, like All Quiet on the Western Front and Official Competition starring more notable actors and actresses not on your initial 10 here compared to some other films?
Yeah, so I guess with All Quiet on the Western Front, I mean, this is a Netflix film. It will have Netflix money behind it. But that said, I'm not seeing much of an indication that Netflix is confident in this movie. And the reason I say that is because we already know the films that Netflix is bringing to Venice. And All Quiet on the Western Front should be there if they were taking that film seriously. Plus, Netflix already has Bardo. They already have a movie that we know they're going to be pushing in this category. But the omission of All Quiet on the Western Front from the Venice lineup, plus just general sentiment that it just doesn't seem like as big a priority for Netflix. I don't even know if this is going to be Germany's selection. They have another film called Ravaya Kurnaz versus George W. Bush, which I think they might submit over All Quiet on the Western Front. That said, it's a possibility, and it's a big film with known actors, so it's possible. An Official Competition, like you said, there are known actors in this, but that's not a guarantee. Parallel Mothers probably would have gotten in yet last year if it was submitted, but it's not like Penelope Cruz is just like a gateway to the Oscars. Now, Official Competition is a really fun movie. I can totally see it being something that's nominated, but I just don't think that it will happen. I think that it's maybe a little too silly, maybe a little bit too out there, for those Oscar voters, especially because it directly satirizes them. Like, it's a movie all about making fun of the art house establishment.
Well, I think you make some great points there, and moving into our next category of predictions, there's even a film from this past category, International, here. I'm going to go over the best original screenplays for this week because I just saw Cha Cha Real Smooth. And I have Everything Everywhere All at Once at my number 1 spot, which I know makes you happy. But Bardo is right on its tail at number 2. I feel like these are the two early birds, I guess, that are really duking it out because Inarritu, as we know, is just a huge Oscar just player. Like, everything he does has got nominated so far, and I don't feel like that stops here. Like I have in picture and other categories, my number 1 is my winner, but then like 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. It's just in the order I think they have a chance of being nominated, not necessarily being the runner-up in like 3rd place and whatnot. I have Babylon in 3rd, just Damien Chazelle. He's back. Old Hollywood. I thought this was going to be a very writer's movie. And then here's where I hit like my real wall of I don't really know where to place things. I had The Fabelmans at 4. They snubbed Spielberg last year and Kushner for West Side Story, so I feel like there is the avenue to lead them off again, but snubbing them 2 years in a row for what I'm assuming is going to be another worthwhile nomination in The Fabelmans would seem a little odd, especially for Academy favorites, as both of them are. And then I have the film that won the Cannes Film Festival this year, Triangle of Sadness, as my final spot in the Best Original Screenplay category. While I think this film will have difficulty getting into picture just based off of buzz and the conversation around it, everything I've heard, even from people who don't like the movie, they applaud the screenplay.
I mean, that's a great pick for number 5. Is it likely? No, but is that the place, if Triangle of Sadness shows up, is it going to be in Screenplay? Totally. I think you've got a really solid number 5, but what else do you have on the horizon there? Because, I mean...
So just off my list, I have Don't Worry, Darling. As we've talked about many times on the show already, I am a little wary of this film. I really want to see it succeed. Both times I saw Elvis in the past week, I got this trailer, and I really liked the trailer. I am just a little worried based off of what the premise seems. I, unlike you, have not read the script and don't know like the actual ins and outs of the movie, just the vibes the trailer's giving off and
what do you
whatnot.
think it's about at this point?
Honestly, my initial guess is a somewhat version of like Truman Show, where the wives are staying at home, and maybe it's not like a TV show, but they are in like enclosed in some sort of community where they can't get out of, but they don't actually know they're in there. But we follow like Florence Pugh, who is starting to pick up on little things, whether it is like the shot in the trailer of the plane flickering in the sky, or just little things here and there. But then after that is where I have Cha Cha Real Smooth at the number 7 spot. This is a film I would love to see make it all the way, and I guess we can't count anything out with Apple. I just have not seen that the love for this movie that Coda had, because Coda even still had love all the way back earlier in the year after its August release. Like, it wasn't just like it came in August and no one talked about it. It was still like on the radar. And Cha Cha Real Smooth is a movie that, while it won Sundance, it came out even earlier than Coda, and I haven't really heard a lot of buzz for it. Like I said, I didn't really know anything about this movie besides it won. And like Coda, I knew a lot about the movie before I even saw it. And then is where I get to some of my more, I guess, fun picks. I have Bros at number 8. I think this is a film that has a lot of potential. If they don't bite on Triangle of Sadness, I think this will be their one, like...
It could be the big sick.
Yes, I think they're going to have at least one just, like, go for it movie. And I guess you could make a case that is Everything Everywhere All at Once, but since I had that in picture, I'm not counting that as my, like, just one, like, wild card screenplay. Like, we've got in the past with, like, The Lobster and other films, and, like, The Big Sick. I think Bros has the potential to do a lot in the award season in the screenplay category, and especially at shows that do recognize comedic films, because like the Globes take it as you want. If they really count or matter anymore, I think Bros has a chance to win the Globes. It depends on where Everything Everywhere All at Once places, but I feel like Bros just, it makes sense for a Globes movie, and I think it makes sense for a screenplay movie, especially if it's very well received, like all of its pre-release trailers and photos have been. And then I have Rustin at number 9. This would make sense to get in, just I want to wait for like a trailer like we talked about last week with Coleman Domingo. And then at number 10 I have the aforementioned 13 Lives. I really want to see this movie do well, just that release date does scare me. I know Amazon has their reasons for putting it out that early, but for a screenplay, for a movie to that caliber that is not a quote-unquote fun movie or populist movie, I am just a little wary, but I'm going to keep it in my 10 at least until we see it.
I mean, I think you have a really solid top 10, but I have one question for you. Where is Empire of Light?
I am not sold on Empire of Light yet. I know that you had that as your big Searchlight push, which is looking like it's going to be because of Next Goal Wins being delayed or just not being that movie. But Empire Light was the movie I had in here before I put Cha Cha Real Smooth on here, because originally I did not have Cha Cha Real Smooth before I saw it, because I just, like I said, I hadn't really heard much about it, and then I saw it, I was like, okay, well, clearly I'm at least passionate about it, so I know there's going to be other people, and it won Sundance, so I'm going to have it on my 10. So Empire Light would be my 11, but I'm just not very sold on it being, because I don't see them putting two, like, directors youth, because they already have the Fablemans, and I guess maybe Bardo could be that, but Bardo also could not be that. I just don't see it being that many, but I guess it should probably be 10, but I mean, I got 11, so that's close enough.
But that brings me to Best Picture. I'm not going to go through everything because my list hasn't really changed much, but I'm going to talk about what is up and what is down this week. And for me, Empire of Light is up this week. And that kind of comes after the revelation that Next Goal Wins might not be releasing this year again. Now, this is kind of contradictory because Taika Waititi himself said the film is done and he thinks it's releasing this year, but immediately someone stepped up and said, nope, my sources at Searchlight say that this movie is not coming out this year. Also, it's not an awards movie. So the movie could be done and just sitting on ice, and Searchlight might just be waiting for the right moment to release it. But that said, if it's not in the TIFF lineup in a few weeks, I don't think it's coming this year. I think that if it misses TIFF this year, it's going to be dropped on Hulu next summer. So, Next Goal Wins being down means that Empire of Light is up. It also would mean that Banshee of Inisherin, as well as The Menu, are kind of slightly up, although I don't have as much confidence in those films. I think it's shaping up a little bit more to see Empire of Light is Searchlight's push. Otherwise, some other movies that I think are up and down. We got 13 Lives, which is up. After the trailer, it seems pretty easy to see that this movie is a contender after all. But that also means that a movie called Till, a film by Chinonye Chukwu, who is the director behind the movie Clemency. This is her sophomore film, and it's a story about Emmett Till, and specifically his mother trying to get justice. That film is being released by United Artists and MGM the same way that 13 Lives is. And because United Artists and MGM is not that big a studio, and they have Women Talking, and they also have 13 Lives, for me, that means that that's a lot to juggle. And if 13 Lives is good, and they actually are pushing it, and they are pushing Women Talking, that means Till is dropping from where it might have been before. I also want to mention The Woman King. We spoke about it earlier. Woman King was nowhere near my top 10 anyways, but after seeing the trailer, it is even lower. So The Woman King is down this week. Now, I still have Everything Ever All at Once as my number one in Best Picture. It's going to stay there until I'm proven wrong. She Said is also up there. I've also got Babylon and Women Talking that I'm very confident in. And of course, the usual suspects of Killers of the Flower Moon, The Fabelmans, and Bardo. But otherwise, nothing really has changed for me this week. I'm just super excited to see how the season plays out, and I think we're going to have some very big revelations when the TIFF lineup comes out and we see what is missing.
I know that last week you talked about Women Talking being a movie that you expect to show up. Is there anything else after the reveal of Glass Onion that you're like, maybe I didn't originally think this was going to come, but could pop up now?
I think something that you were mentioning, Bros, I think that is going to TIFF, and I think it's a strong contender for the People's Choice Award because I think it's going to really, really resonate with that audience. It looks like a total crowd pleaser. Otherwise, I'm definitely expecting to see Bardo there. I think that also could be a contender for the People's Choice Award. I also think it's worth mentioning, I talked about Call Jane as one of my favorite movies of the year. I think that if that shows up at TIFF, it has a chance of winning the People's Choice Award because of the political nature of the film and the environment right now. Plus, it's a total crowd pleaser. I wouldn't put it past the TIFF audience to give that the People's Choice Award. So honestly, I think anything can happen, but we're going to really see the Best Picture lineup shaping up once we see that TIFF lineup coming to view. Now, that said, that's a little bit of dangerous thinking because last year when I saw that King Richard was not at TIFF, it made me lose all confidence in that movie because I thought to myself, if King Richard is good, they would have put it in TIFF.
That is true.
We see that King Richard made it all the way, even without TIFF. Even though I think that if King Richard was at TIFF, it could have won the People's Choice Award. Same with Coda. Coda could have won the People's Choice Award if they put it at TIFF. So TIFF is not the be-all, end-all. There's always something that misses TIFF and then makes Best Picture. So we're going to see. But for me, TIFF shows where the studio's priorities lie.
Well, I think that we had a great discussion today talking about some of our favorites of the year so far and some movies that we haven't got a chance yet that we are going to be catching soon. But we wanted to switch it up this week because this week's release was Minions Rise of Gru. Well, some people, me, are excited to see it. We know that's not going to be a major Oscar player, but next week we're going to have one. And do you have any early thoughts about Thor Love and Thunder before going out to the theater to see it?
I mean, I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a big Oscar contender. I think it's just going to be a fun blockbuster movie. But, I mean, we've all been waiting for Taika Waititi's follow-up film from Jojo Rabbit, and this is what it is. So I'm really excited to see the film. What are you thinking about Thor Love and Thunder?
I think it has a shot for visual effects. I think a Marvel movie will get in. Will it be this? Will it be Black Panther? Will it be Doctor Strange? I guess we'll have to see. Right now, my money is on Thor: Love and Thunder, but I'm just most excited to see Christian Bale and whatever kooky thing he's going to do as the villain of this movie.
That's definitely what I'm most excited for, too. I've heard that he is one of the best villains that Marvel has ever had. Now, it's not a huge, high bar, because usually the weakest part of Marvel movies are the villains outside of, like, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, and Black Panther. I'd say those have really strong villains. Otherwise, you know, the villains...
I will counteract you and say Josh Brolin's take on Thanos in Endgame is not good. It ruins and demeans everything that Infinity War built up because he reverts back to how he was in the beginning of that movie. But I know that is a hot take.
Interesting.
I am not a fan of Endgame.
But for me, Endgame was one of my favorite movies of 2019, and I think it's one of my favorite Marvel movies. And Infinity War, I think I gave that a 6 out of 10 when I first saw it. I didn't like Infinity War like one bit.
We are on the opposite page.
Totally on the opposite page. But no, for me, Endgame, it just hit me. It hit me hard. So, you know, we're both looking forward to seeing Thor: Love and Thunder.
But yes, I'm very excited as well. Come back, Fantasy Filmball, every Sunday, 10 a.m., brand new episodes, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you want to access podcasts. But until then, my name's Dyl.
And my name's Matt. This
is Fantasy Filmball.
Fantasy Filmball. Fantasy Filmball.
Woo! And thank you for tuning into this episode of Fantasy Filmball with Matt and Dyl. Keep up to date with us on Twitter at @FilmBall. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. We even upload a video format of the podcast to YouTube if you want to see our faces. Thank you for listening to this episode of the show, and come back next week.